Ladies and gentlemen, my name is SuddenlyNinja and it is time for a new episode of In the Beginning. This week's episode is sponsored by the great and generous Al Valentine, who was nice enough to give me his spare copy of Hand of Fate. I suggest you have a look at his channel. There is a lot of quality stuff on there and he really tries to bring something new to his channel every week. As always, little warning beforehand, this game is in early access, which means that there could be bugs, there could be crashes, not all of the features will have been implemented yet. Basically, the game isn't done, so keep that in mind while watching. Hand of Fate is a bit of a mix between certain genres. The meat of the game consists of playing a game of cards against a character who I assume could be best described as a dungeon master. He is the one who shuffles the cards and he tells you what happens when you encounter different enemies and situations, and the whole system plays very much like D&D, except that you're on your own, and every time you start a dungeon, you start from scratch. You will only have your basic items and your basic weapons, and you will have to make do with what the game gives you.
Blessings will remain always active and are never removed. Unless you die, of course. Then you're back where you began, as always.
All the dungeons you play through are randomly generated every time you start a new game, so that makes for a really unique experience every time you play, although it also adds a little bit of RNG to the game, which is something that's not always going to help you have a good run. Sometimes you can just be unlucky. That's the first 50% of the game. The second half consists of tiny battle arenas in which you fight the monsters that you encounter during the card game in a real-time third-person environment, and it's this mix that makes the game so interesting. Most of the times I am put off by card games because the suspense and the combat isn't really there. It's just words on the card and then you roll for damage, and if you're lucky, you win. But not in Hand of Fate. Whenever you encounter a card that sets you up for a fight, the game switches to this battle arena where you get to fight those enemies in real time, which adds a layer of excitement for me. Now there is also the meta side of the game, a portion that is easily overlooked, but just as important, if not the most important, in Hand of Fate, and that is the ability to craft your own deck of cards. Whenever you defeat a boss or successfully complete certain encounters, you will earn extra cards with which to build or expand your current deck. Now these can be anything from new traps and enemies to weapons, armor, and random encounters, and not only can you build your own deck to increase the chances of getting a good weapon or a strong piece of armor during the game, you can also edit the Dungeon Master's deck to control which encounters and enemies you'd rather avoid and which ones you'd like to see more of. Speaking of things I'd like to see more of, at the time this was recorded, the only class available to play was a warrior-like man that wields an axe and a shield, and he punches people to death. The game doesn't even give you a choice in the matter, you just play as this guy and that's it. And I would like to see more choice in this matter somewhere further along in development, just so I can play through these dungeons as a mage or a rogue, use some different weapons, different equipment, get some different random encounters. I think that would add to the diversity of the game and prolong its life significantly. That being said, Hand of Fate is still one of the best games I've ever reviewed, and I am very thankful to have happened upon it such as I did, even though it is still in early access and is in constant development. It is a little bit expensive, coming in at almost 20 euros, but it is certainly one of those games where you might want to keep an eye on it and pick it up whenever you feel like it. I can promise you it won't let you down. Hand of Fate is available now through the Steam Early Access program for 20 euros, $25, and £15.
Inevitable, I suppose. So often those who beat plowshare to sword die by the grim instruments of their industry.
That is all for this week's episode of In the Beginning. Stay tuned for new episodes every Friday. Special thanks to Al Valentine for pointing this game out to me and subsequently supplying me with a key so I could check it out. Go and say hello to him over at his channel. The link will be in the description. Tell him I sent you and he'll hand you some free candy, although you may need to pester him about it. Just keep at it and free candy will be yours. If you like this video, make sure to share it with your friends on the Facebook and the Twitter, or simply leave a nice comment behind below this video. I will try to respond to every single one of them. My name is SuddenlyNinja, and I hope to see you next week. Goodbye.
An accident or a trap? I wonder.